Hello, friends.
The Bears are who we thought they were.
The Bears. The Bears.
I am the great Cornholio.
We'll see what happens.
Playoffs?
Cena, Sean McDonough, Jay Billis. Goats.
Can you play a song? Something cool. Put my mic on!
I'm calling both games.
Oh, baby!
Are you serious?
Goes down the field for Smith.
Oh, he got it!
See how we're getting ready for Cincinnati.
Was a wild one in the Big Ten. And no, I'm not talking about Maryland yet, which I will be later on, but this was between Michigan and Wisconsin. And the game was going fine, right? You know, whatever. Wisconsin was winning big. And then we got to the last minute of the game. And Wisconsin was up big. Up by a lot. And for whatever reason, Michigan was still pressing, right? I guess they figured they were going to come back from, you know, down 20 and a minute left. I don't know exactly what they were thinking. So Wisconsin was probably thinking the same thing. Goes, hey, I don't know what they're doing. We'll call a timeout to get this figured out. And so they call a timeout to adjust to the press. And then they come back out of the timeout and, you know, finish the last minute of the game or whatever, right? They do whatever they went into the timeout to figure out. And then when the game ends, and, you know, that you do the handshake line, tell each other a good game, yeah, whatever. Juwan Howard tells Greg Gard, the Wisconsin head coach. Juwan Howard is the Michigan head coach, of course. He tells Greg Gard, I'll remember that stuff, to put it lightly, to put it in another way, in a radio-appropriate manner. He tells Greg Gard that he will remember that stuff for next time. Greg Gard then goes to kind of try to calm down Juwan Howard a little bit, kind of, you know, the old put my hands on your elbow and your arm, you know, no, it's okay, you know. And, you know, it really looked like he was trying to explain to Juwan Howard, like, hey, man, you're the one pressing, so I had to call a timeout to get my guy to, you know, figure things out. If anything, Greg Gard should have been upset with Juwan Howard for pressing with a minute left in the ball game, you know, while it's a, you know, out of reach game, right? There's no way Michigan is coming back in that sense. It was a 20-30 point game. It was out of hand. And so, yeah, if anything, Greg Gard should have been upset with Juwan Howard, but Greg Gard is, you know, I don't want to talk him up too much, but he's not a jerk. And I don't want to say that he's not, actually, I don't want to say that he's not a jerk, because I'm pretty convinced that in order to be a big-time coach, whether it's college basketball, NBA, NFL, what have you, in order to be a big, like a winning coach, you kind of have to be a jerk. And I know that may sound odd, and there's definitely some class acts out there, but I feel like, you know, you can't be too afraid to let others know your thoughts, right? Like, you can't, if the officials are being ridiculous, you can't be scared to voice your opinion on that one. And, you know, if your team is not playing up to expectation, you have to, again, you know, tell them, hey, man, hey, guys, listen, you got to play better than this. We got to figure this out. You can't be too soft. And so I think every college coach that has a really good team is somewhat of a jerk to a certain extent. And maybe a jerk is not the right word to say it, but you're not, you know, Mr. Nice Guy all the time. And so I'm not going to say that Greg Gard's not, you know, I mean, I don't know him personally, so I can't tell you from a first-hand experience. But anyway, Greg Gard was trying to probably explain to Juwan Howard what was going on in the timeout, why he calls a timeout up 20, under a minute left in regulation. And then Juwan Howard says, don't touch me. But there was another word in between don't and touch. It was don't touch me. And then after he tells Greg Gard not to touch him, he goes and grabs Greg Gard by the collar, which was interesting. So, like, I don't want you to grab me, but I'm going to grab you by the collar. That makes sense. That was, okay, that was interesting. So he does that. And then Greg Gard kind of had enough. You could kind of tell he was like, okay, whatever. This guy's out of hand. This guy's insane. This guy's a psycho. I'm going to get out of here before he, you know, before he does something to me or whatever. Because Juwan Howard is a big dude, all right? That is like, I mean, he played college basketball. He was, you know, he made it to the NBA. He's a big dude. And Greg Gard while he's not like, the smallest guy in the world, he's not, doesn't quite match up to Juwan Howard. So Greg Gard is like, okay, I don't really want any part of this. He gets out of the scuffle, kind of goes to the side, is trying to get his players out of the way. And I would imagine that Juwan Howard said something else after he said, don't touch me, to prompt other coaches and players to get involved. Because after Greg Gard got out of the shuffle, I guess you'll say, everybody else got involved. Everybody else was in the mix, I should say. And that is when what was said is kind of unknown and left up to imagination. Because, and the only reason I know what Juwan Howard said to Greg Gard and can kind of imagine what Greg Gard said to Howard is that there was a video, I think it was Barstool Sports that posted it. It was a video of like really up close, like it was on the court. And I mean, you could hear everything that Juwan Howard was saying clear as day. And like, nothing was left up to imagination. You knew exactly what he was saying, because part of it was that it was a close video to the action, but also that it was, Juwan Howard was shouting, he was yelling. And I'm not quite sure what Greg Gard said, because I think Gard wasn't quite yelling at Juwan Howard. I think he was trying to keep things calm. And so what was said beyond the Howard and Greg Gard exchange is pretty unknown to the general audience, to the general public. But as I mentioned, everybody else goes and gets involved. If you haven't seen the video yet, look it up. It is wild. It's crazy. It's almost like you wouldn't have seen that. Well, I guess you would have seen it in hockey, but it was almost like watching a hockey fight. Like it was pretty big for basketball. And so, as I mentioned, everybody else is getting involved, and I don't know if the assistant coach from Wisconsin said something to Juwan Howard. I don't know if he said something to a player. I don't know what happened, but something prompted Juwan Howard to swing at the Wisconsin assistant coach. And he swung, but it wasn't like a closed fist. Like he swung at him like he was throwing a punch, but it wasn't a punch. Like he slapped him on the side of the face, and like it looked like he tried to grab his head or something. Like I think he was just out of control and upset, so he was just going crazy, as one does when they get upset for the opposing team calling a timeout up 20 when you're still pressing them. I guess I don't know. So that whole exchange was wild, and then the Big Ten on Monday morning hands out a 5-game suspension to Juwan Howard, which is the rest of the regular season, and a $40,000 fine, which seems appropriate, seems fair. However, when you start to think about Juwan Howard a little bit, you may be thinking that he should have been handed a bigger suspension or a bigger fine or even lost his job. Because when you look back at other instances of Juwan Howard going crazy and getting out of hand, it has happened quite a few times for a coach that's been at Michigan for 2-3 years. I think this is his 3rd year, I believe. I'm not quite sure on that. I didn't look that up prior to the show. That's my bad. But for a guy that's in his first 5 years of coaching Michigan, the amount of times that he's gotten out of hand or gotten teed up is a little alarming. And let's just take a flashback to last season. The Big Ten tournament, Maryland and Michigan were playing, and Juwan Howard was upset at the officials, I guess we'll say, to say the least. And, he was getting kind of out of hand. He was coming out onto the court. Like he was, there's that little line that they have to where the coach isn't supposed to cross, but nobody really follows it, so whatever. But Juwan Howard at one point was actually on the court. He was out of hand. And Maryland's head coach at the time, Mark Turgeon, told Juwan Howard to kind of calm it down. Keep it, all right, get it together, man. And Juwan Howard got pretty upset by that. And probably said something back to Mark Turgeon, and that prompted Turgeon to say some things. There was a rumor that he said, don't go hanging any banners because they'll get taken down, alluding to a past occurrence where a Michigan tournament banner was taken down after, the cheating or whatever. And so that, got Juwan Howard even more upset. He went and charged at Mark Turgeon. And the two got into it a little bit. There was some pushing and shoving. And that was that, right? Juwan Howard gets a technical foul. He gets thrown out of the game. He's yelling like crazy. He's probably cursing a blue streak the whole way. He was going crazy. And it's not just that. There are plenty of other instances this season and last season where when he gets upset at the officials, it's more than getting upset. It's like he looks kind of insane. He looks kind of crazy. Like he looks like his head's about to explode. And like I don't know. I don't know if he's got something going on with him or what the deal is there. But there are plenty of times where he yells at the officials, and it is more than being upset over a specific call. It is him being just absolutely out of hand, going nuts, as I mentioned before. And the other thing about this is there is a common theme in the Juwan Howard Mark Turgeon incident and the Juwan Howard Greg Gard incident. And it was that it was what he said after the fact. It was what he said after the game. And if you watch the press conference after the Wisconsin game on Sunday, of course he was asked about it, right? How could you not ask about that? You just got into one of the biggest brawls of not just this season, but probably the past 3, 4, or 5 years or so. So how do you not ask about that? Naturally, one of the reporters has the guts to pipe up and say, hey, man, what was that all about? And Juwan Howard replies with probably one of the more interesting replies or answers or excuses, however you want to frame it, of all time. Right? The fight was interesting and odd enough, but the response to what the deal was even better. And it was that he was trying to protect himself. He was trying to defend himself. And for Sunday's game, at least, that is quite interesting because he started by talking trash to Greg Gard, and then Greg Gard grabs him to kind of calm him down a little bit, explain what was going on. He grabs him by the collar and then later swings at the assistant coach. And as I mentioned, Juwan Howard is a pretty big guy. If you've ever seen him, he's at least 6'6". He's a pretty big dude. And as I mentioned, Greg Gard's not the biggest guy in the world. He's probably like maybe 6 foot. So Juwan Howard's got a good half a foot on him, on this guy. And, maybe the assistant coach is a little bit taller, maybe a little bit bigger. But I don't know. It just seemed interesting that Juwan Howard was talking about having to protect himself from a guy that he's got 6 inches on and probably gotten about another 50 to 75 pounds on. And it's not just 50 pounds. It's like, muscle. I mean, he's a big dude. He played basketball. He got in the NBA. So I don't know exactly what you're trying to protect yourself from. Not really sure. You kind of started the whole thing. Nobody swung at you first. Nobody really grabbed you first, except for a guy putting his hands on you, try to calm you down because you were already out of hand. And if you're that visibly upset anyway, maybe you should just go through the handshake line and just get back to the locker room. If you're that upset, what use is it yelling at the other coach? What use is it, yelling obscenities at the other coach? What does that do for you? I'm not really sure what that does to help you out. I'm not really sure what that does to help you make you feel better. But it's just the cherry on top for me is saying that he has to protect himself from guys that are half his size. That one just takes the cake for me. He said it this time, and he even said it last year after the whole Mark Turgeon exchange. He said he was protecting himself. He was trying to defend himself. And again, I think Mark Turgeon's even smaller than Greg Gard. Mark Turgeon, I don't know if he's 6 foot. And I think he probably is 6 foot, but like that's the thing. He's like, not like it's not like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was coming up to you in the handshake line and putting his hands all over you and wanting to get into it. It wasn't exactly John Cena getting into it with you. I mean, these are guys that you don't need to really worry about protecting yourself or defending yourself from. I don't know if they're exactly threats for you. So the fact that he gets into it with these guys and lets these smaller guys get under his skin and irritate him that much is odd. And then when he takes it a step further and is saying all kinds of stuff to them, saying stuff that if I said it to somebody in the grocery store, I'd probably get the cops called on me. And you're saying that to another coach, another assistant coach, potentially other players maybe. And then afterward, you say that you had to protect yourself, you had to defend yourself. That's real interesting. I'm not sure on that. I think Juwan Howard is missing me on that one. So I think this guy is crazy. I think he's a psycho. I don't know that he is going to be a coach for a lot longer, because I think now this is his second major instance of getting out of hand. I think if he does this one or two more times, he's probably going to be out of a job soon. Because it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are. If you are getting into fights with other teams, that's probably a sign of it meaning that it's time to go. And whether or not he'll be done after this year, whether or not he'll be done after another instance or so, I'm not sure. But I don't know. I think Juwan Howard is on very thin ice right now.